Change is a constant for organizations and thus for us as managers. Because change cannot be eliminated, managers must learn how to manage it successfully. Because innovation is often closely tied to an organization's change efforts, well, managers must know how to manage it as well. Organizational change is defined as any alteration of people, structure, or technology within an organization. Instead of trying to eliminate change, managers should realize that change is always present and that they should seek ways to manage that change successfully. Change requires a catalyst. A manager may act as a change agent, which is someone who acts as a catalyst and assumes the responsibility for managing the change process. Both external and internal forces create the need for changes. Here are some external and internal forces for change. External forces create the need for change, and they come from various sources, such as consumer needs and consumer wants, possibly some new governmental laws, whether it be local, state, or federal. Obviously, another source that comes from an external change is going to be that of technology and the economy. Now, internal forces create change, and they usually originate from the internal operations of the organization or from the impact of those external changes. Now, these internal forces will include things like having a new organizational strategy within the organization, or maybe the composition of the workforce has changed. Receiving and implementing new equipment is another force for change that's internal to the organization. And of course, lastly, employee attitudes can change as well. Now, what can a manager change? Well, a manager may make changes in 4 different categories: strategy, as you can see here, structure, technology, and people. With strategy, companies that fail to change their strategy when circumstances dictate it run the risk of failing. Changing strategy involves modifying the approach to ensuring the organization's overall success. Now, managers can alter one or more structural components of the organization, such as things like work specialization or departmentalization, the chain of command within the organization, or the span of control, as well as whether they're centralized or decentralized, and if they're formalized. Frequently, the design of the organization structure is changed in order to meet new demands. Now, I mentioned technology is another one here. Competitive forces or new innovations are often going to require introduction of new equipment, new tools, or operating methods. Automation is a technological change that replaces certain tasks that were originally done by people, and instead we're going to use machines to perform the same tasks. And lots of reasons will do that. As an example, your machine is going to not call in sick, or it's always going to be there, and it's going to perform the same way every single time. So that's one reason why automation is a technological change. Computerization has probably been the most visible technological change in the last several years. Now we'll talk about people. Now, I want to talk about a term here, organizational development, or OD. This is just a technique or programs to change people and the nature and quality of the interpersonal work relationships. There's a method of changing behavior through unstructured group interaction I think you should understand, and that's called sensitivity training. Once again, that's just a method or methods that we use to change behavior through unstructured group interaction. Now, another way is with team building. Activities that help team members learn how each member thinks and works, and allowing those people to be together to understand the effects of having a team, that's team building. We could also have intergroup development. Here we're changing the attitudes and stereotypes and perceptions that work groups have about one another. We could also use process consultations. This is where an outside consultant helps managers understand how interpersonal processes are affecting the way that work's being done. And lastly, in the realm of people, we could do survey feedbacks. This is a technique for assessing attitudes and perceptions, identifying discrepancies in these, and resolving the differences by using survey information in various feedback groups. Managers are motivated to initiate change when they are committed to improving organizational performance. As you know, when it comes to change, most people naturally want to resist change. Resistance to change is a natural event in organizations and occurs for the main reasons that could include like uncertainty, people's habits, concern about personal loss, and the belief that change is not in the organization's best interests. Now, there are several techniques for reducing resistance to change. Organizations can build up the inertia that actually motivates people to resist change. So these techniques for reducing resistance by the organization are going to be things like educating and communicating, having the ability to let all employees understand why change is there and make sure that you use many methods of communication for them to get that information. As well as participation. Let employees be part of the changes. This so often does not occur, and it just happens, and it's not organic, and people naturally are going to resist. Make sure to use proper facilitation and provide support when there's change. Use the art of negotiation when it comes to change. Another way is through co-optation, and coercion is probably the strongest one, so we try not to coerce people too much, but it can be used to deal with resistance to change. And really, coercion just involves the use of direct threats or force against those who are resisting that change. Just try to use that as a last resort, because when you can use the other ones and navigate those much better, resistance is going to be much less, and people will buy into the changes. Contemporary issues related to managing change include organizational culture, employee stress, of course, and successful change action. Culture is resistant to change because it consists of relatively stable and permanent characteristics. The fact that culture is formed over a long period of time and that strong cultures have highly committed people also make it difficult to change an organization's culture. It's important that we're understanding the situational factors. Some situations can facilitate cultural change, including things like perhaps some dramatic crisis has occurred. Another example, which could be seen as a dramatic crisis in some, but another force would be a change in leadership in the organization. Maybe you have a young organization that is small in size, or you simply don't have a culture that's strong and have the opposite of that, and that's a culture that is weak. I mentioned employee stress. Stress is that adverse reaction people have to excessive pressure when it's placed on them from extraordinary demands, constraints, and opportunities. Research shows that stress may be related to the organization or to personal factors. Important variables that have been known to cause employee stress, and these are definitely something you should keep in the back of your mind so you understand your employees, are going to include things like task demands that have been put on them or changing in the role demands that they have. There could be role conflict. This is where work expectations are hard to satisfy. We could have a role overload where they have more work to accomplish than what their time simply allows or permits. And maybe the role expectations have not been clearly communicated, and therefore the employees are not clearly understanding their role expectations. Maybe they have some interpersonal demands, or it's because of the organizational structure or the organizational leadership. Maybe it's simply their personality. And we have ways that we can reduce stress with our employees. Well, one thing is our employee selection process. So we don't bring in people that we can tell are greatly stressed. We should provide realistic job previews during our process so that potential employees who are interested in the organization clearly understand what that job's going to entail before they further on through the process and we hire them. Another way we can relieve stress is to use management by objectives so that we're working with our employees. They know exactly what the expectations are and how they're going to get there. As well as we may just sometimes need to do a job redesign because the job, is not structured correctly. Maybe it, is too much work in a small amount of time. Whatever the case may be, we cannot be stagnant in our organization. If a job needs redesigned, then we should make sure we do that. So these are just a few ways that as managers we can reduce stress within our organization. Now, innovation is essential to organizational success in a very dynamic current marketplace. Whether it's a company like Apple or Google or whatever, all companies rely on innovation to be able to deliver the products and the services that are necessary for the marketplace. And make sure you understand the difference between creativity versus innovation. Creativity is just that ability to be able to combine some ideas in a very unique way or to make some unusual associations between ideas. Whereas innovation is taking creative ideas and turning them into useful products or work methods. How can we as managers foster innovation? There are several different ways. There are sets of variables that can be found that have been found to be able to stimulate innovation in an organization. Such as structural variables can be summarized like having organizational structures that positively influence people's innovation. As an organization, our culture says, hey, we would like you to be innovative where you see that we can be innovative. The easy availability of organizational resources provides a critical building block for innovation. If the resources are there and employees have an innovative culture, then innovation can be an organic process. Also, frequent communication among work units helps to break down any type of barriers that could exist for innovation in our organization. We should also try to minimize time pressures on creative activities. Allow them the ability to be able to think it through. And we should provide explicit support for creating work and non-work sources. Cultural variables show that an innovative culture is likely to have some characteristics that I think you might find interesting, such as, if a innovative culture exists, we're going to see that there's a tolerance for risk as well as a tolerance of conflict. We're going to focus on the ends rather than the means. This culture is also going to provide positive feedback to employees. There's going to be human resource, or we're going to have a culture that has an acceptance for ambiguity. So there's a lot of different characteristics that we're going to see, as well as one I want to make sure I mention is that there's a ability to minimize the external controls that can hinder our innovation. Human resource variables indicate an important role that people play in innovative organizations. Innovation or innovative organizations actively are going to promote the training and development of their employees so that their knowledge will be current. We want our employees to continue to grow and get more skills. And having that, being an innovative organization, we're going to promote that. And when we promote that, employees are going to want to learn new skills. They're going to apply those skills. And when they get these new skills, they're going to naturally want to learn how to innovate change with those new skills. Another thing with innovative organizations is they offer employees higher job security. If we're investing in our employees with things like training, development, so they can be more innovative, well, we don't want to lose them to a competitor. Now, innovative organizations encourage individuals to become what's known as idea champions. That is individuals who actively and enthusiastically support new ideas. They build support, they overcome resistance, and they ensure that the innovations are being implemented. As you can see, change and innovation are obviously inevitable, and it is up to us as managers to be able to focus on ways to manage change effectively and to promote innovation within our organization and the cultural organization or the organizational culture.